Have you ever wondered why house slaves were kept indoors and field slaves were kept outdoors? The reason is for the color of the skin, meaning lighter slaves were kept indoors to protect their light skin. Because if they're working in the field, well, of course, the sun will eventually tan them, making them darker and darker over time. And so the house slave was not kept indoors because they were light-skinned, but they were kept indoors to keep them that way. And the reason for that is because Now, have you guys ever pondered on why they brought slaves from Africa to America and vice versa? Because that's a thing that most people do not realize. During the same times Christopher Columbus was coming to the Americas, maybe a decade earlier, the Congo, was being crept up on in the same manner by Mr. Cow. What is his name? It's right on the tip of my tongue. Something Cow. C-A-O. Well, you can look it up, but that guy, something Cow, he was sailing up the Congos, pretty much doing the same thing as Christopher Columbus was doing in America. And so, at the same time, you kind of get two continents being colonized, Africa and America. And so the reason they were bringing slaves from both places back and forth, not many as the way it's portrayed, meaning they make it seem like they were just bringing boats worth of slaves, and this was a business thing, a resource thing, and so they were mainly bringing the resources from this place back to Europe, but they were bringing, few slaves as well with them, and when they'd come, so they'd bring, as many slaves as I guess they could pack on, because they're, bringing back resources. So, the reason they were bringing African slaves to America was for the purposes of domestication, mixed breeding. See, you have to remember, indigenous men cannot come in contact with the European. For some reason, they die. They call it smallpox, this thing, that thing. Even in modern times, they tried to colonize Sentinel Island, the Sentinelese people. And, the guy kidnapped, 3 of them, an adult and 2 youngsters. And the adult died, and not too long later, the youngsters died as well. And so it's the same when you're dealing with, American history. The Europeans came, next thing you know, the natives became sick. Or the indigenous men here became sick, and a lot of them died. And so you have to grasp, these two cannot breed together, meaning indigenous men and them Europeans. And so this is why they were bringing African slaves for the purposes of domesticating, meaning in 1492, it was deemed that the whole world, would be under Christianity in the Catholic Church. And so, as I said, in 1492, Muhammad the 12th, which was the last ruler of the Moorish fortress, surrendered to the Catholics. Also in that same year, the Jews were kicked out of Israel. And so do you follow what I am saying? The Arabs, they have their religion and their science their practices, and their culture prior to 1492, before Muhammad XII surrendered to the Catholic Church. When he surrendered, so their true faith and beliefs and practice was replaced with the Catholic Church's teachings in their language, or their wording, or the way they could grasp it better. And so from 1492 up into now, Islam is truly Catholic Church teachings. If you're confused, prior to 1492, there was no Islam, but you had the Prophet Muhammad teachings. This was the name of it. You guys call yourselves Muslims now, not followers of Muhammad. You guys call yourself Islam now, not the teachings of Muhammad. And so I want you to grasp, in 1492, your true teachings was replaced with the Catholic Church teachings in a rendition suitable for your ears. And so this is your Quran and all the other hadiths and teachings that go with it, which is truly just the same as the Catholic Church. This is why you guys have Jesus or Isa in your text. Same text, different rendition. Now the same is for the Jews. If you're confused on Jews, I'm talking Hebrews. This is what the Hebrews would have become, the Jews. And so just like the Arabs, they have their own faith, beliefs, practice, and followings. It's called the Kabbalah. And so they have their magic science and their voodoos, or whatever you want to call it, their practices, their beliefs. And so in 1492, when they were kicked out, meaning those who would not convert were kicked out, the rest converted. Those that didn't convert were killed. Those that avoided converting and getting killed, well, they kind of fled. And so you have all those Jews now converting to Catholic. You have those that converted and those that are dead. The few that are scattered abroad, so they still have the original teachings that the Jews had, but there's few of them. They're being hunted down. Stay focused. I'm not talking about Jews you see today, but those white-skinned Jews you see in those areas, this is how that happens. And so I'm explaining that. Don't get lost when I say Jews and you start thinking side locks and, high waters and white socks. I'm not speaking of that, but I'm speaking of original Jews and their original teachings, as well as original Arabs and their original teachings. Now everything is whitewashed, or Catholic. And so when you're dealing with the Jews, as I said, the few that were scattered abroad, so they were in this lands, that lands, still living by the true practice and beliefs, until they were eventually caught up with whatever few were left. And so now we live in the world we live in today, where both Islam and Judaism is no more different than a rendition of the Catholic teachings. And this is how you got that. Meaning, this is how you got that kind of whitewashing or changing of the religions, making them all the same. And so this goes back deep, like to the Moors. Let's start there. Explaining how Willie Lynch is an actual real person, born in 1742 in Virginia. He's famously known for always running his mouth about how the term lynching derived with him. He is the source of it. And so many people say, no, 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 no. That don't add up either, because the so-called speech, the Willie Lynch speech, is before he was born. He was born in 1742. The Willie Lynch speech was like in 1712. It can't be him. And so I want y'all to grasp. Captain Willie Lynch, that was born in Virginia in 1742, that said, he is the source of the term lynching. Well, he has a daddy named Joseph Lynch who named him. And so I'm sure Joseph Lynch is the character that said that speech. And so I'm sure he probably named that speech after his son, because that's what men did in the past. They started a business or anything, kind of named it after their child. And so you have to grasp, like I said, Willie Lynch, he told everybody, I am the source of the term lynching. And so you have to grasp that term lynching comes from that Willie Lynch letter. And so Joseph Lynch is his father. And so if Joseph Lynch is the one that actually said this speech, well, it makes sense why Captain Willie Lynch said he is the source of that term.